again that this is not a sponsorship, this is simply a factual mention. The Iranians themselves also released a few videos showing the interception of 2 Israeli drones, but aside from that there was not much coming from their side except footage of ballistic missile launches. The missiles, with a few exceptions that you can see here now, also did not produce many spectacular images. There are a few impact videos, but not that many overall. One argument is that such footage is simply being suppressed, but from experience I can say that if there were a significant saturating effect caused by a large number of impacts, it would be almost impossible to hide it completely. Therefore, it is highly likely that the number of actual impacts is indeed limited. The most impressive piece of footage in that regard was this video here showing an Iranian ballistic missile avoiding interception by 3 interceptors before crashing into the ground. All of this was filmed by US service members.
It is. Come on, motherfucker! Second. Come on.
I have to be honest here, the series of interception videos, whether by missiles, close-in weapon systems, helicopters, or fighter jets, has so far appeared far more convincing to me than the somewhat staggering counterstrike of the dying Iranian regime. And now you might accuse me of being paid, biased, or whatever, but this is simply my opinion based on the data and footage I have seen so far. Here, for example, we see something that until recently we had mainly seen in Ukraine, an F-16 shooting down an Iranian drone at very close range in an aerial engagement, filmed by a witness. And here we have intense footage of a Patriot system performing air defense duties in Qatar. We can see that the system is under heavy strain, but it still appears to be doing its job for the most part. One small thing that could be mentioned here is that one of the missiles seems to experience a malfunction. I'm not entirely sure why. It's possible that it tracked a target but wasn't fast enough to intercept it and therefore follow this flight trajectory. Here we have another video showing a similar incident. At first, I thought it was from the same occurrence, but this one was reported to have taken place in Jordan, so I am not entirely sure. Of course, it could also be that the previous video was misattributed to Qatar, or that the one from Jordan was misattributed by Twitter reposters because of the watermark. What is definitely for sure is that this video shows Iran's ballistic missile campaign for what it is, a failure. This missile, filmed from a highway, appears to fall back to the ground immediately after launch inside Iran. Even with the massive destruction of Iranian missile launchers, Iran still has the ability to launch its rockets from underground bases. However, this option is relatively inflexible, and due to the fixed location of these sites, as well as AI-enabled reconnaissance capabilities, it is not ideal for avoiding counterstrikes. Here we see images of the destruction of such an Iranian underground facility. While this does not necessarily have to be a launch site, it could also be a production facility or a storage site, but you get my point. Of course, not all of the missiles were a complete failure. For example, in the first days of the attack, several US military bases were hit, including facilities of the United States 5th Fleet in Bahrain as well as a base in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan. These impacts were documented both by circulating video footage and by satellite images released afterwards. According to reports, some of the missiles did cause limited damage to infrastructure and facilities on the affected bases. I will get to the satellite images in just a moment. Drone strikes also targeted logistical infrastructure such as ports in the Gulf, as shown here in Oman. The damage here also appears to be limited so far. What could of course become a problem in the long term are the strikes on energy infrastructure, especially by drones. However, even individual missiles can have serious consequences, as shown in this video, which as of March 5 shows one of the latest such strikes, a ballistic missile attack on the Babco refinery in Bahrain. Continued successful strikes on energy infrastructure in the Gulf could have significant regional and global consequences. Even limited damage to refineries, export terminals, or loading facilities can disrupt oil and gas flows, create uncertainty in energy markets, and drive up global prices. Because a large share of the world's oil exports passes through Gulf infrastructure, repeated attacks could also force temporary shutdowns, increase insurance and shipping costs, and put additional economic pressure on both regional producers and the global economy. Combined with a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, this is currently Iran's most impactful weapon of retaliation not only against Israel, the United States, and the Gulf states, but against the entire world. And should the air defense interceptor rate of the US and its allies really run low before Iran's strike capabilities are taken out for good, this could at least create the problem of continued disruptions through successful strikes like this for at least the next few months. This is currently the biggest issue I see here. However, if Iran's capabilities are sufficiently degraded, interceptor stockpiles could, as already mentioned, be conserved more from now on, allowing defenses to focus more on other forms of air defense, especially against the drones. But more on that in a moment.